What's up guys, it's Darius, and Sony is one of the largest tech companies on earth. They make Hollywood movies, incredible TVs, amazing cameras and headphones, and even the most popular game console. However, their smartphones were never really that popular, or good for that matter. Sony had a very clear approach when it came to their smartphones. They stuck to their thing and didn't reinvent the smartphones like other manufacturers claim they did. They released many smartphones frequently, all with the same blocky design with the big bezels, similar features, and a camera that could usually only impress on paper. For that reason, no phone ever really stood out. But all of that is supposed to change with the new Xperia XZ2, and this is my review of it 2 months after its release. Before we start, make sure to click subscribe and hit the bell to not miss any of my upcoming videos. But let's get on with the review. This is the first redesign of a Sony smartphone in 5 years. It looks a lot more modern with a taller aspect ratio, meaning smaller bezels, but it didn't include a notch. Now the bezels could still be a little smaller, especially the chin, but that's really just nitpicking. Nevertheless, I quite like the new curvy design, and I especially like the new color. Sony didn't completely abandon their design strategy, as it still looks like something from Sony. The best thing about design are definitely the ergonomics. It's actually quite thick and heavy, and in combination with the curved back, makes it lie very comfortably in the hand. It also feels very sturdy, and I don't see it breaking anytime soon. Naturally, it has the usual small scratches, however, it's held up quite well so far. The customary IP68 rating is also present. Of course, the glass back comes with the usual caveats. It's a little slippery and a huge fingerprint magnet. The one major issue I have with the build is definitely the placement of the fingerprint scanner. It's just way too low. It seems like Sony wanted a standout characteristic of their new design to be the low camera placement, which is fine, but it's like they forgot about the fingerprint scanner, and we're just like, okay, I guess we'll just put it below the camera, which is a terrible spot for it. It's very awkward to reach for it that low, and my finger naturally goes to where the camera is when I try to unlock it, which means I got a ton of smudges on it. With time I did get used to it, but it's still a little weird. The scanner itself is actually quite nice and accurate, no complaints there, but I wish they found a better placement for it, like on the front on the bottom bezel, or on the power button like they used to do it on previous smartphones. Speaking of the buttons, their placement is also a bit odd. It seems like you're supposed to use the phone in landscape mode, and the buttons itself are also a bit flimsy. Xperia XZ2 is clearly made for media consumption. Sony's marketing slogan for it is "made to touch your senses," and they mean it quite literally. They've developed a new feature called Dynamic Vibration System, and it vibrates the phone based on the audio that is playing. It basically lets you feel the action by vibrating the whole frame of the phone. The great thing is you can set the intensity for every app individually. There's mild, which barely does anything, powerful, which usually overdoes it, and normal, which is the sweet spot. In some cases, it does add a bit to the media experience. However, for the most part, I had it turned off because it just got annoying. It wasn't very consistent, meaning when there was repetitive music playing, the vibration wasn't consistent with the beat, and quite often I thought there was an incoming call, which just confused me. I do really like the idea, and if executed a little better, it could really make content come to life. Now the actual speakers are actually quite good. Sony used to have dual front-facing speakers on their phones, and again, they didn't quite give up on that either. There's still a front-facing speaker on the bottom, using the earpiece to create a stereo sound. They get quite loud without distorting and sound great. I also really like that the speaker is so wide, which makes it very hard to cover. Now the other aspect of content consumption is obviously the screen. It's a full HD 18:9 triluminous LCD panel with HDR10 support. It's a nice panel which gets plenty bright, although the blacks could be a little better. One thing that it does that I've never seen on a display is it uses the X-Reality engine to convert regular footage to HDR, which means pretty much everything you watch, like something on YouTube, has more contrast than usual, and it takes some getting used to. For the most part, it did do a good job, however in some cases it was just too much, but luckily you can turn it off in the settings. In order to let you consume that much content, battery life has to be on point. It houses a 3180 mAh battery, however with such a thick body, I feel like they could have easily fit in a larger one. Now battery life is not bad, it's actually quite good, however it could have been outstanding. The on-screen usage was very good. On a regular day, I was usually left with about 20%. With a little less usage, you can definitely get a lot more out of it because standby time is excellent. There's even a cool feature called battery care, which increases the battery lifespan by reducing the time the device is charged over 90% for a long time. I really like that feature because I usually charge my phone overnight. In terms of all the small features, it pretty much has them all. It has wireless charging, even quick wireless charging, Quick Charge 3.0, a micro SD card slot. The only thing it's really missing is a headphone jack. I'm still disappointed that manufacturers keep going on with the trend, but at least Sony built in an LDAC with high-res support, which means audio sounds a little better even if you're listening wirelessly. Sony produces almost all of the camera smartphone sensors, however the cameras on their phones could only ever really impress on paper. The XZ2 is rocking a single 19 megapixel shooter which can record 1080p video at 960 FPS, and it's the first smartphone to shoot 4K HDR video. It's actually the same setup as on previous models with a couple of added features, however you got to admit that this sounds incredible. It's actually a really good camera, not quite the best, but it's up there. Pictures generally look very good with plenty of detail, very accurate colors, and good dynamic range. Sometimes they're a bit over sharp, but nothing dramatic. In low light, Xperia smartphones used to struggle a lot, but on the XZ2 it's actually quite good, despite it only having electronic image stabilization and no OIS. Speaking of stabilization, pictures actually turned out blurry quite often, especially if I use the dedicated shutter button because you press down on the whole phone. It didn't help that the focus wasn't that fast either. To fix this issue, there's a predictive capture mode. There it predicts when you're going to press the shutter, takes a couple of shots before and after you actually press it, and then it will let you choose the best option. In many cases, it was actually quite helpful, but it didn't prevent all of the blurry shots. In the app, you find all the normal modes, including a manual mode, even a 3D face scanning one, but sadly no portrait mode, which isn't really surprising since it's only a single camera. While we're on the topic of modes, the new 960 FPS mode is just incredible. It looks like something shot with a professional camera and it really impressed me. They've bumped up the resolution to 1080p, however decreased the capture time. You only have a split second, which makes it very hard to time, and I missed a lot of shots because of that. I wish I had some form of movement detection like the Samsung Galaxy S9. The 4K HDR video looked really good as well. Compared to the regular SDR video, it just adds a bit of contrast and saturation. To be honest, there was not too much of a difference. Moving on to the last aspect, the software and performance. And I must say I was disappointed. While it has the latest and greatest internals, the phone actually lagged quite often. It froze, there was frequent app crashes, and it even got a little warm under load. This really shouldn't happen on a smartphone in 2018, especially a flagship one, and should be fixed with an update. It barely received any updates, but granted the phone hasn't been out for that long. One great thing is that you can actually preload the Android P beta on it. I didn't actually do it, I stuck to the stable version of Android 8.0, but I like that you have the option. Sony's UI hasn't changed much over the years, and I think it desperately needs a refresh. Icons look dated, there's a lot of bloatware, and way too many features, some of which are useful of course, but most of which I could do without. The skin definitely isn't as heavy as it used to be, but it's sadly not the overhaul I was looking for. To conclude, Xperia XZ2 is a step in the right direction for Sony. It is the first redesign in half a decade, which I think turned out well. It has a great display and speakers, however the software and performance definitely aren't up there, and while the camera is definitely an improvement, it's still not good enough for a company like Sony. I could recommend this phone to anyone who doesn't mind Sony's UI. However, it's still quite expensive in the $600 to $700 range. And if it were my money, I'd probably go with the Galaxy S9 or something like the OnePlus 6 instead. Anyways, I'll have it linked below if you do want to pick it up. It would be great if you could use that link. Thank you guys for watching all the way up to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button. Comment down below if you have any feedback or questions. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Link is down below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified once I upload a new video. See you in the next one. Bye.